This is Brian Rowe from LSNTAP.
Welcome, everybody. This is Chris Tuttle. Any housekeeping work that you need to discuss first before we get started?
I just want to let people know that this is one of our last two webinars for this year. We've got a dashboard data visualization webinar coming up on November 12th. And then we'll be doing a survey for what topics people want to see next year. So watch for that. It's going to be out on the LS Tech listserv. And that's about it that I've got. So take it over.
Terrific. Thank you so much. Welcome, everybody. My name is Chris Tuttle. I'm going to be working with you today as well as our co-presenter, Christine, which will do some quick introductions here in a second. As you hopefully are aware, today we're talking about social media engagement and really how to ramp up our social media and ensure that we're getting the most out of it and engaging constituents in a way that is meaningful and supports our mission. As I said, I am Chris Tuttle. There we go. I am a idealware expert trainer delivering webinars and in-person trainings around communications, marketing, and engagement with a focus on social media. I've worked for about 16 years in the nonprofit movement or in nonprofit movements, working with social justice and conservation organizations primarily, but have worked with large global foundations and small nonprofits over those 16 years, and now focus full-time on my own work consulting with those groups. And with me today, we have Christine. Christine, how are you?
Good, thank you. So I'll just give you a brief intro. I'm Christine. I probably know many of the people on the call. I'm a prior attorney and case handler. I have been doing project management, community outreach, community education, that kind of thing for about the last 10 years. Recently, well, not so recently anymore, about 18 months ago, I moved into the role of half-time communications director for MLSA. I still do project management on many of our TIG grants. And so my role has been one of learning a lot and trying to use best practices to affect an effective communications plan. So I am not here probably as an expert, but more as maybe a sounding board. Maybe I can give you some tips on, what has and has not worked for us as a legal services program, that kind of thing. Thank you.
Terrific. And I would actually say you are an expert, but I think we'll all learn from each other today, and that's going to be a great thing. I also want to welcome folks to ask questions and to engage. I know we have everybody on mute right now via the audio call, and we do that to really just keep some of the background noise off the audio line. But you can unmute your phone by pressing *6 if you would like to ask a question, and I encourage you to feel free to interrupt us, especially me, at any time. Otherwise, you're going to be listening to me talk for an hour and a half, and you will be bored out of your mind. So don't do that. Engage with us. Ask those questions. This is your opportunity. Again, it's *6 to unmute your phone, and it's *7 to remute your phone once you've asked your question. For those who are not familiar with idealware, idealware is leading this webinar today, and idealware is a nonprofit organization that works with nonprofit organizations to support them in providing unbiased technology reviews, resources, and training. If you have not been to idealware's website, definitely check it out, idealware.org. Lots of great resources, many of which you can access for free. Everything from creating social media policies and for your website and how you manage your social media to workbooks on how to do more. We also have other webinars that are available, including new upcoming webinars and past webinars that are recorded and that you can access for a discounted price. So today we're talking about social media engagement, and specifically we're going to focus on 4 aspects here. So we're going to be talking about goals and what we're trying to achieve with our social media engagement. 2, we're going to be talking about what exactly that means. What is engagement? And what does that look like? We'll talk about how we can actively practice engagement in all of our communications, and talk about some next steps of how to get you started. So First and foremost is a little challenge I have for you. And up on the top of your screen, you have a join.me little bar, and the second icon is a chat icon. And it might be easiest just to use that. When you use that chat icon, it shares it with us, the presenters. Share with me, how do you, as social media users, in your personal lives, how do you use social media today? I assume of those on the call that everybody is probably on at least one social network, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube. Tell me some ways that you have used social media. And again, you can just use that chat icon, and you can just type it right into the box. And I love this chat room because you can see each other's chat, so this is great. Some of you are chatting directly to me. Folks are talking about using it to talk about law, games, on YouTube, keeping in touch with family and friends, so networking, there's personal connections, a lot of keeping in touch with family and friends, which is great. Well, and that's all great to hear because, and more coming through, legal services using Twitter. Janice, I assume you may mean legal services in that you are providing legal services or looking for legal services. On a professional level, Noah says that you're using it to further development goals for your organization. Great. So lots of different uses there. And the big thing we wanted to kind of highlight there is to remember that we are all social media users. We all use social media in much the same way that our constituents are using social media. You know, our constituents are not solely using social media to communicate with us as organizations or brands. They're using it to keep in touch with their family and friends. They are using it to access information like legal services. So they're across the board, and if we remember where our constituents are coming from, it'll help us think about how we're communicating with them using social channels, because really our constituents are in many ways just like us. They're posting updates for their family and friends. They're sharing pictures and videos. Many folks are using it to market themselves, whether it's an individual who's starting a home business, or somebody who's a consultant, or somebody who's marketing themselves as an expert in their field. And of course, they're learning about other things, including things to do, maybe learning about information or fields that they want to know more about. But more than anything, they're also, hopefully, having fun. In fact, it's one of the constants we have found in social media is that people want to be happy. People want to have fun. They do want to complain, and they do want to rant, and they do want to, especially during the elections, we all want to share our political views. But we always come back to the happy photos, the pictures of cats, the videos of somebody dancing really funny. And that's because we all want to laugh. We all want to have fun. And what we tend to find on social media is that when we can, as brands, as organizations and brands, when we can tap into people based on how they're accessing and why they're accessing social channels, that we'll find engagement is much stronger and it's much greater. So there are plenty of ways that we can think about this, but some examples of how we can break through all the communications that are out there between friends, between families, between networks, is these examples we have in our screenshots. Is we have folks who are giving updates on their 6-month-old, down the bottom example here. We have people who are giving updates on their pets. Oops, good one slide too far. People who are tagging each other. People who are going out for drinks and sharing across social networks even. People talking about what they're doing. So what we want you to do, and what we're encouraging you to do, is to think of social media in the same realm, in that we want to communicate with folks in the ways they want to be communicated with, so that we're not posting on social media like we would in a press release. We're not just announcing events. We're not just asking for money. We're not just pushing resources via a press release style communication, but we're actually engaging with people, our constituents, in the same way that they're engaging with each other. And that's a social way. That's a two-way communication. So we're going to be talking about that today and how we're going to do that. And first and foremost, let's start by talking about goals. Christine, if you don't mind, I actually want to throw it to you here and ask you a question. So obviously, you're somewhat new to this role, but you're working in the social media realm for your organization. What are your goals for using Facebook, for example?
So we have different goals for different channels. So we primarily have a Facebook channel and a Twitter channel. Our goals for our Facebook channel are more client-oriented, to get information out to clients and potential clients about our services, about our hours, about what's happening, that kind of thing. I was mentioning to Brian earlier that Twitter in Montana is fairly non-existent. We use our Twitter channel to communicate more with our national partners, our Legal Services Corporation, other legal services, that kind of thing. And we also tend to view our Twitter channel as more donor-oriented as well.
Interesting.
So
Interesting. Yeah. So one, I love to hear that you actually have the goals already planned out. Obviously, I'm totally putting you on the spot there asking these questions.
That's fine.
But two, I also love that you have goals for the specific channels, because you've realized and you understand that the channels work differently and are communicating possibly with different audiences. So that's great to hear. And that's exactly what we want folks to think of. We want to think about what are our goals first and foremost. Why are we on Facebook? Why are we using Twitter? Some folks will say it's just so we can communicate with constituents. And that's a nice high-level, overview goal, but it's not very specific and it's not very tangible. Others will go to the other extreme and say we're on social media to fundraise. And again, I would say that's a great goal, but specifically, who are you trying to fundraise from and how much are you trying to raise, so that we can figure out how we're going to do it. So goals are going to help us figure out which social media tools we're going to use, how we're going to use them, which is going to often depend on what we're trying to accomplish and the audiences we're trying to reach. And like we've all heard before, our goals should be SMART, and this is the same with social media. I usually suggest when we're working with organizations to start our social media strategy that we try to focus on 3 or less goals per channel. We might have 3 overarching goals for our entire social media strategy. If we can get more specific per channel, that's great. But thinking first and foremost about what are our specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely goals. That, of course, does mean that our goals are going to change over time. In our first year of using Facebook, one of our goals may be to increase the number of people who are aware of our organization and brand by 1,000. So, and we're going to measure that by 1,000 likes by the end of the year. And that's how we're going to measure the number of people we've increased our brand towards. A fundraising goal is going to be much more specific, and it's going to be, of course, in how much time are we trying to raise how much money by how many people, which will then, of course, help us figure out what channels we're going to use. So we do need to have our goals, and I'd love to actually take a second and hear from all of you in the chat room, or you can unmute your phone. But what are your goals? What are you trying to achieve? And these don't have to be written out perfectly, but as clearly as you can. Have you thought about goals so far? And can you share them with us? What are you trying to achieve using Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn? So you can just type that in the chat box if it's easier for you. You can also unmute your phone and share with us verbally.
So one of the big things at both Northwest Justice Project and Washington Lawyers for the Arts that we use social media for is letting people know when services are available. So when our clinics are coming up, when we're having a talk about foreclosure mediation or opportunities for veterans, that type of thing. So we've really tried to reach out to those audiences, start to talk with them, and then let them know when there are useful events for them specifically.
Terrific. That's Brian speaking?
Yes.
Great. Brian, so if you don't mind me putting you on the spot, this is where goals get difficult. Is how do you measure whether or not you're successful at
that? Any of the channels we use have wonderful analytics within them, so we can see how often it's shared, liked, followed, that type of thing. But what matters more to us also is the actual attendance at events. So Washington Lawyers for the Arts, we've seen that more intakes come in when we are active on Facebook promoting the clinics, but not just the clinics, when we actually talk about the arts community on a regular basis and then mention the clinics occasionally, so that we're able to engage people in the arts community around an arts discussion and then let them know about this free or low-cost resource that's available to them. So we look at the attendance in the events that we've promoted and the ones that we haven't, and have clearly seen an uptick in the ones that we've promoted.
Great. I love that. I love to hear that you actually are thinking about reviewing your analytics and measuring what's working and what's not. And it sounds like long-term measuring that things are increasing and improving. Noah's also shared via the chat room, thank you, Noah, for that, that you have robust social network as the basis of online development campaigns. That is as you said, a vague goal. It's a big goal, which is great. And I'm sure as you work it and flush that out more, that we can be more specific with exactly how many people you're trying to engage or how much money you're trying to raise in the development campaign, so that we can measure whether or not we've achieved the goal at the end of the quarter or year. So these are all great. This is exactly what we're trying to do. So other folks were somewhat silent and didn't share in the chat room, so I'm assuming you either haven't thought of your goals yet, or you're just not sure, or maybe you're shy. So that's okay. Let's go through and actually talk about what our goals would look like. So first and foremost, we want to define what do we want to achieve by using our social media. Usually it's one of the more popular or common ones of trying to reach new people, trying to reach existing people with our programs or information resources, or trying to raise money. Those typically tend to be the three large buckets that I find most organizations are using social media to communicate with folks. So if we think about building the community, that's going to be measured by such things as the increase in the number of followers we have on our social channel, the increase in the number of people talking about our organization, the increase in the number of people who are taking the actions that we ask on our social channel, are all aspects of building our community. Second goal might be about providing information. This could be for information about our resources, or it could be information about upcoming programs and events. But we want to get, of course, specific, and we're going to share how many resources or programs on what regular basis. Similar to what Brian was saying, it sounds like you have a kind of an overview of at least your breakdown of how much you talk about your programs and how much you talk about other things. But so our goal is providing information. We're going to figure that whether or not we're successful based on how many people are accessing that information. And people, of course, access information on social media by engaging with the content, so liking, commenting, sharing, but mostly clicking through probably, especially if we are providing a link to a resource. The link to the resource and the clicks on that link are really going to help us understand whether or not people are utilizing the information we're providing. If we're providing information about events or offline programs that folks can attend, then the number of people who may attend those events and how they said they came might be some of the ways we measure. Likewise, services is very similar to the resources. We might be promoting our services or our programs, ensuring that folks know about that. I'm on the board of an anti-violence program here in New York City, and we actively use Facebook especially to try to educate people about our hotline number where they can report acts of violence that they've either witnessed or experienced. So we measure that often based on how people who called into the hotline said they heard about us. And I like to point that out because that's not always intuitive to folks, that sometimes the way that we're going to measure our goal is not directly related to social media. So our phone calls and our intake information is how we're going to measure, in this case, whether or not our social media communications are appropriate and working or effective. And then that great ever elusive goal, I think, is to raise funds. This is probably one of the most common things I hear from organizations who are looking to use social media, is how to raise money on social media. And I'll be completely honest with you, it's also the hardest thing to do on social networks and social media. Social media was not designed as a place to give money. It was not designed as a place to ask for money. And so it can be very difficult. It's not impossible, but it can be difficult. Now, of course, anytime we're looking at raising funds online, especially if it's a total digital or social campaign, we'll want to make sure that we have our goals set, the timeline for our campaign, and how many donors we're even looking to achieve, to gather. So I'm going to skip through this or actually, I'm sorry, I'm not going to skip this. What other core goals can we define? So just thinking about the last 4 examples of goals that we've already given, is there anything else that's come to mind as you're listening to this that you also want to share and for us to consider or think about as we talk today in this presentation? And again, you can just use the chat room, or you can press *7 to unmute your phone.
This is Christine. This one thing that I mentioned is that we use our Twitter account to really speak with our colleagues across the nation. And I think that is one aspect of using social media that we had not bargained on in the beginning, but we're finding that very helpful. We're getting to know our colleagues a lot better, and that's really helpful when we're, say, looking for a partner on a grant application or looking for information about a project that we want to replicate, et cetera.
I love that. So your core goal is to probably develop or expand upon your partnerships and even knowledge sharing, maybe.
Right.
That's great. And that's actually a really great example also of social media's power. I just launched a campaign on Monday for an organization I'm working with that's a bunch of conservation wildlife sanctuaries. And within 2 days of us launching, excuse me, our social media campaign has already reached, I think we reached as of this morning, over 200,000 people across Facebook. It blew all of our expectations, completely away. It was incredibly successful. And as we're talking and following up, most all of the sanctuaries involved have kind of said to me one-on-one or in our calls that they never expected that they've never had that kind of reach before, and they keep thanking us as the organizers of the campaign. And what I actually had to turn around and say was, but it wasn't us. It was actually all of you. We barely promoted this. It was you all working together in partnership and supporting each other. So partnership, and there are different aspects. There are some where you're going to partner on a campaign like that together. There are others where you might just be partnering to promote each other's resources or services. And there are others where you might be actually looking to learn from one another. But there are definitely a lot of partner opportunities that goals can be helpful for. So Dee has a good question here. How does one learn the levels of engagement the audience will tolerate? It's hard to know how much fun interaction is considered amusing versus annoying. That's a really great question. And Christine, I'm not sure if you have had much experience with that, of using fun and more creative or information sharing on social, or if you keep it more professional.
We have a little bit of experience with trying to be, funny. We try to, our brand is that we want to make people feel comfortable. And so we want to, project an image that is not, particularly stern lawyers, but people like everybody. And so we're pretty informal here at our organization, and we try to portray that across our social media channels. I will tell you that our quote, fun, unquote, efforts have been met well. So say, for instance, we'll share information, a comic or information about a pub event that's a donation event for us, and those will be shared more than any of the other materials that we put out there. And I would also say that it's taken some experimenting. You kind of have to be willing to, you can read all day long online about best practices for how many times to tweet, how to do it, that kind of thing. But what it boils down to is, for us at least, is we've really had to just try it and see what happens.
I'm so happy you said that. In fact, so I do work with a lot of organizations, and I step in and out of either running campaigns or sometimes running daily communications as needed. But I would say almost across every organization I work with that the posts or the communications that have been the most successful tend to be the ones that are a little bit more fun, a little bit less about what we're trying to achieve. Sometimes it's a little bit more about us. For instance, behind the scenes pictures of our staff at an outing or at a retreat or working on something. And it's interesting. It's those people do like fun and funny. We do have to be a little bit careful, of course. We want to try to always make sure that we're not sharing something that's potentially offensive or is going to damage our brand. But it's a lot of trial and error, just like you said, and we learn from that. And I think that's how I would probably give the best answer to Dee in your question. There is, what's the balance between fun and amusing and potentially annoying? Is trial and error, is really testing out what your communications and figuring out what your audience wants from you.
I think that's a really important point. Lawyers tend to be very risk adverse, and trial and error is one of the only ways you're actually going to figure out what your community is okay with. It is okay to make some mistakes in social media as long as you are honest, upfront about it, and learn from them as you go. It's very different than putting a brief out that has to be perfect. They want to see a human side in social media, and making minor mistakes, learning from them, and interacting with your community humanizes you.
I think that's probably the biggest takeaway I would hope people leave this webinar with. I think you are exactly right. And it's those human aspects of our communications in every organization I've worked with, whether it's very professional organizations or very social justice organizations. It's always the human aspect that prevails. Well, let's talk about what exactly engagement means and how we actually get to deeper engagement, because I think engagement is a word that's often thrown around social media, and we want to talk about a little bit about what exactly is that. So a lot of people focus on engagement as being the number of likes, especially on Facebook, the one social network we're probably all on and actively using. And we look at engagement based on the number of likes a post gets, maybe the number of likes our page gets. And it tells us a little bit about who, quote unquote, likes us. But really, when we're working on engagement from our standpoint, we want to move people away from the like, which is great, not saying they shouldn't like, but move them to loving us. We want them to really develop a deeper relationship with us. And so quickly in the chat box, share with me maybe what you think is engagement or how you measure engagement on your social channels. So beyond the like, what are other ways you're able to measure engagement? Again, you can just use that chat box, and it shares it with the whole room, or you can share it directly with me, whichever you're comfortable with. It's always great hearing back from y'all and hearing where you're coming from as well. So Noah's sharing that when you think of engagement, you're thinking more of interaction and conversations and getting input from folks. It's wonderful. Comments, attendance, so that would obviously be event attendance or probably offline attendance. Sharing of your content, that's great. I love that one. Connecting over issues that are more meaningful, whether through a blog or a meme. Asking questions, Brian, great one. Yeah, that's always a wonderful one for me, is when folks are asking questions, I know they're starting to pay attention. These are all wonderful examples. Well, this is the form of engagement, or the way that we look at engagement at idealware, and there are similar models that are used across communications experts. But we look at engagement as a pyramid. And many of you all have probably used or seen pyramids in other aspects of our organizing work, whether it's a donor engagement pyramid or a volunteer engagement pyramid, even a board recruitment pyramid. But the pyramid of engagement for social media really falls into 4 buckets of actions. And the largest bucket, that bottom one, is the attraction of followers. It's getting people's attention. And we can measure that by finding out how many people like our page, how many people follow us on Twitter, how many people subscribe to our YouTube channel. We can even look at email and how many people are actually signing up for email lists if we're considering email as social networking or social media, which some do. We also then want to look at there's going to be a smaller group, but we want to move people towards listening and responding. So it's great that people are liking us on Facebook. That's wonderful. But if you haven't heard the stat yet, I might crush some of your dreams. But Facebook actually uses algorithms that determine whether or not people see your content, even once they've liked your page. So once they've already said, I want to follow this page, Facebook will still determine for you, and we don't have much control over it, whether or not they're going to show your post to your existing followers. And of course, we want people to listen and respond. We want people to like individual posts. We want people to comment on them and share information. But Facebook has this algorithm, and they've determined that they're going to show any given post you create on Facebook to less than 15% of your existing followers. And there's been some recent studies that have actually found that it's even dropped below 15% to around 5%. And there's some concern and belief that Facebook may even be dropping that to as low as 1 or 2%. So we don't know exactly. Facebook doesn't tell us all the answers. Facebook still says it's 15%. Other companies' studies have said it's more like 10 to 12%. But what we do know is that Facebook is deciding which of our content is most important to show folks. So we need to keep that in consideration. But that also means that a smaller number than the people who follow us are going to engage with our content. And so those are the listening and responding. The next step is you're going to be an even smaller number. Those are going to be the interactions. And those are deeper interactions, like asking questions, answering questions we may have asked via social media. And I would even say sharing of our content is an interaction. Interaction could also include people talking about us on social media without our asking for them to. And then finally is the take action group, the ultimate of engagement. And those are the people who are clicking through. Those are the people who are downloading your resource. They're clicking through to your donation form and making a donation. They are clicking through to the link you provided and subscribing to your email in order to hear more or learn more from you. And we put on the side here, your value and their value, in that, of course, we all as organizations and brands, we value those actions. We value those folks who sign our petition, who make a donation, who subscribe to our newsletter, who download a resource. But that's also the hardest aspect or hardest engagement to achieve for various reasons. It takes more time. It takes more commitment from a user. It possibly takes more information, so users have to give away more personal content, like their phone number or address or email address or money. And so while the numbers of people who do each, as we get up this engagement ladder or engagement pyramid, the numbers will increase. What we also need to remember is if all of our social media actions or communications are focused on getting people to take action, then we're not speaking to people who just want to interact. We're not speaking to people who just want to listen and respond. And we're not necessarily attaining or getting the attention of new followers. So when you're thinking of your communications, I'd like for you to think of them across these 4 different buckets, and that we want to ensure that our social media communications include things that are going to attract new followers, include posts or communications that are going to encourage folks to respond, to hopefully interact, maybe even share, and ultimately take action. And if we can focus more on those smaller actions, those easier actions to take, then we'll find over time that we'll find more people are taking the larger and the deeper actions of engagement. Another quick tip here is to really remember not to shout at people. And what we mean by this is a lot of organizations have come to social media from having previously just a website or just email, may or may not have a lot of experience working in social media with other brands or even personally, but we're often thinking of social media as yet another way to talk at people. And it's just a reminder that social is different than our website and different than our emails, in that social media is a way to talk with people. And people can actually respond, and people expect to be able to respond and engage. And so if we are communicating in ways that say, we're happy to announce this new event, it's very press release oriented and very official sounding, that we're not encouraging people to engage. We're encouraging people to listen. If we ask folks, have you heard about our new event, our new gala, our new resource? What do you think of this? We're asking questions and we're producing content in a way that is going to naturally be more social. So remember not to shout at people, but instead talk with them.
This is a great point. This is the biggest mistake that I see nonprofits, especially legal nonprofits, make, is that they mistake social media for a broadcast medium, and they try to turn off comments and talk at the audience. Having that engagement is so important. People will ignore you if you're talking at them, and they'll become your best friends if you talk with them.
It's completely true. And if it makes you, go ahead, Christine.
Oh, I was just going to say, I know Brian and I had talked about there being a lot of fear among legal service providers about opening up those channels of communication. And, we have been working on that very slowly. But one thing that will help, I think, or has helped us at least, is to have some, standard responses available. So if somebody is on Facebook asking for services, we don't engage them too much. We do have a standard boilerplate response about how they should contact us to get an application and to find the information they need. If somebody does post a comment, I'll be honest, we don't share our comments to the public yet, although I know that we probably should. But if somebody posts something that's a complaint or a grievance, then we have another standard way to handle that. And so that's been sort of comforting for our administration as well as for me in knowing how to interact with people, and you're not just opening this huge gate that all of these people will be, talking to you through. We haven't had that experience at least yet.
Yeah, I like that. I would encourage you to open up your comments and be more public with that. But that's also because, and this is 2 parts. So we're actually, to Brian's point also, is you talked about, you see in the legal services world or the legal organizations, this lack of engagement and using social more as a press release. Just know that's not just a legal services world. That is true of a lot of nonprofits in most every industry. We're all still learning. Social is relatively young, and it's changing incredibly fast. There's new sites popping up constantly and new ways of doing things. Facebook changes every other month, not only their layout, but what their capabilities and functionality. So we're all learning together, and we can all do better. But the one concern I do have about the limiting of commenting, and I share this because there might be others on the call that are also doing something similar, is that when we limit folks from commenting on our social posts or having their voices heard, especially when they're upset, usually with us, they tend to go elsewhere to be heard. And so we're not actually stopping them from talking. We're stopping them from having a conversation with us, possibly. And we're possibly stopping them from finding resolution in their complaint. Often folks complaining just want to be heard. Not always. Sometimes folks are, wanting to do a little bit of damage to us, but often folks just want to be heard. And that's one thing about social that is different than our email and web communications, is not every person and every constituent can have their own mass email list or have their own website or knows how to have their own website. But every person can broadcast their opinions on social media. Even if not on your page, they can tweet out to their friends and followers, to their family members on Facebook, to their LinkedIn connections, whatever they want about you. And there's really not a lot we can do to stop that. So that's my one concern about when we limit commenting and critique on our own social channels, is sometimes we end up pushing people to go elsewhere to talk about us, and we've lost the opportunity to talk with them and resolve that. But obviously,
one of the things that we encouraged Northwest Justice Project to get on YouTube was a search of Northwest Justice Project on YouTube, where one of the things that came up towards the top was somebody sitting on hold on our hotline who had a negative experience. We were able to then take that medium and provide some useful content, other things there, and control the message of what was going on there and help deal with a problem. With Washington Lawyers for the Arts, we actually got a comment and found out that our intake wasn't working correctly, and we were able to fix that when somebody brought that problem to us. So other people are going to talk about us one way or the other. We need to control that message and help people when they have those problems, not shy away from them.
That's a really good point. We had a similar situation recently where somebody did message us through Facebook about, she was angry about what was perception that it was our fault. It actually turned out to be the way that a partner organization was referring to us. But through that comment, that messaging, we could address it with our partner organization and with the person who was letting us know. My standard, response is thank you. But in this case, I really was thankful that she had, let us know what was happening, because otherwise we probably wouldn't have for a long time.
That's really, those are both great examples to hear, and I love learning from you and hearing those. I think that's exactly true, and things that I've seen across other organizations as well. And Brian, you said it, and I just want to reiterate it, that you had the opportunity to frame the message as part of that conversation, and that's great, because we do want that. We do want to have that opportunity ourselves to be able to frame the message. And often, folks' complaints can be handled and can be responded to in a way, even if they're going to be taken offline to be dealt with, but can be done in a way that's going to make your organization look good. Because people do want to see that you are responding to folks and you are working with folks. So that's great. So just moving us forward here, this is just reiterating what we talked about, providing content and communications to folks that are going to provide value to them at every stage of that engagement pyramid. Starting here at the bottom of the pyramid, or the entry point of our pyramid, is offering a central place for people to ask, learn, stay informed, and join. Christine, it sounds like even if you may not have comments turned on or visible, you do have messages turned on. So there is a place where people can ask questions. They can obviously like your page and follow you and join in that regard to learn and become more engaged. We want to find them those opportunities that they can be heard and get answers to questions that they may have. The community aspect really takes part in that interaction. I think it was Noah in the chat room who had shared about thinking of engagement as an interaction, and I love that. I completely agree. That's where we're really asking folks for their opinions. It's where we're asking folks what they think of something or how they like something or what their experience was or what they want their experience even to be. Those are all ways that we can engage folks, is often asking questions. And then that ultimate is connecting them to something great, something bigger. Again, it is going to be harder when we're going to see smaller numbers than the number of people who like us. But I think that's true even off of social media. I think we have 100 people come to an event. We might see 10 of them want to volunteer to do more with our organization after attending that event. We might see 5 folks want to become major donors after an event. So it's the same type of pyramid structure we're going to see in our offline work and communications as well. So what does it mean to provide value? Some things that we can all be doing that can provide value to folks, our constituents, is going to be talking about services that we offer, talking about opportunities to volunteer or to learn more, especially online, about volunteer opportunities, providing a space or a portal for events, resources, community building, and also asking folks what other information we might be able to share with them. It's also thinking about using social as an opportunity to communicate with our constituents and learn from them, what are we missing? What else do they want? What information should we be sharing? That can actually be incredibly valuable to our constituents because how often do we do that? How often do we, in our day-to-day work, do we ask our constituents what they want from us and what they need from us? And that's one of the places that social can be helpful for. Before posting anything, we do encourage you to think about, is this providing value? That is not to say that every post we make must be a 20-page resource that provides legal support and information. That's not, again, the only type of value that we're providing. Community can be valuable. And laughing can even be valuable. Fun information can be great and great ways to engage folks. The other things I just want to point out really quickly back on this slide, and I didn't say this earlier, when I talk about Facebook limiting the reach of any of our posts to our fans and our followers, that the more people who follow us, the more people who like any post, the more people who comment on and share or click a post, all of those interactions are going to increase the number of people that Facebook shows your post to. That's all part of Facebook's algorithm. So the more people who engage with your post on every level of our pyramid, then the more that post will be seen by your followers. So it is a growing aspect, and we can reach more folks by engaging more folks. So we also want to make sure that we balance value between what our constituents want and what we want and need. Obviously, they don't always match in complete alignment. Over on the right-hand side, we may be looking more for community engagement and providing our services and building support for our work. But our constituents may want more answers or resources or just something to do or even opportunities to speak out around issues that are of concern to them. And so we do have to find that balance. Also want to remember it's not just what we do, but how we do it. So we don't want to use social media just because you think you should or just because people are there. And this, I think, goes back to Brian's comments about being authentic on social, is that when we're using social in a way that is inauthentic, people can see it. People know it. And I find that very true of my posts. I find sometimes on posts, even for my own company, that sometimes I feel like, oh, I have to go post something, or it's been a while, or I need to post something just to keep people engaged. And I almost always find that those random I need to post something posts tend to be the least successful. I think that's because people feel it, people see it. People realize that it's just content, just for the sake of content, and not because it's necessarily of value or importance. So just a reminder again to think about, what do you provide, what does your organization provide that is of value? And we all have value. We all have staff with incredible resources, with incredible information to share. Our organization obviously has great programs that we're delivering, great services. We might have great volunteer opportunities to provide folks. So how can we share that value with others?
That reminds me of one of the more interesting uses of YouTube at one of the nonprofits I used to work at, Public Knowledge out in DC. They had their FCC counsel, Harold Feld, just sit down and talk for 5 minutes about what he had been doing at FCC. If he was there working on access to white spaces for community radio, or if he was looking at unlocking iPhones, he just sat down, put it in plain English, they shot it, and then they put it up. And that type of quick, easy engagement allowed people to kind of connect with the org and see what they were doing on a day-to-day basis at a very low cost.
I love that. And that actually ties right into what we're talking about next, which is practically practicing engagement. It's what things can we be doing on each of those levels to reach folks, attract attention, to get them engaged in commenting, liking, sharing, and actually taking action on our content. So in some ways, what he was doing there could be attracting new followers. It could just be something exciting. It's an opportunity to see into the day-to-day work of the organization, to see something that we wouldn't normally understand or necessarily know, and to learn more about those who are working in the organization. But we want to offer exciting things. Sometimes off the attraction level of attracting followers, sometimes this is also the fun stuff. Sometimes this is the really great moving photos or great videos that we may have. Other times it's going to be a little bit more deeper in that it might be an exciting announcement. It might be a new partnership, or it might be a really great resource that people are hungry for. We also want to think about in that next level, how do we get them into the door? How do we actually utilize our existing constituents and our channels to get more folks into our door, to learn of our organization, to attract their attention? And so some examples of how we can do that are simply asking constituents to invite their friends. It's something that's very, very simple and oftentimes can work, especially if it's done around a campaign, like inviting friends to join you at an event, or inviting friends to join you in a fundraising campaign, or inviting friends to join you in doing something online, so maybe participating in a social campaign. Another way is asking influencers to promote your brand to your page. This is actually a big one. And when we say influencers, we don't necessarily mean celebrities. If you have celebrities, great. That's even better. But influencers are people who have a larger following or a following, and who can communicate effectively with that following. And that following may be 100 people, it may be 1,000, it may be 1 million. The number is not as important, but it's folks who have a following and whose following actually listens to them. These are often your staff members, your board members, possibly even major donors, your volunteers, your sponsors or your partner organizations or companies that work with you. They all have influence over their connections. I often look at influencers also as brand ambassadors, and that they're people who can speak on behalf of our organization or speak to our organization's good work. I would encourage you to think about having a brand ambassador's email list. And this is true for all social content, but especially Facebook, Twitter, and others. And this is like, think of who are the 20 people in your organization today that you just posted a really great new resource on your Facebook page. Who are the 20 most influential people you could reach out to via email and say, hey, I just posted this new resource on our page. We would really love your help spreading the message and getting it out. Now, we're not going to send that email out every single post on Facebook. We're going to save that for the really big posts and the ones that we really want to reach folks. Or we might select specific influencers to ask to promote or talk about or share specific resources. But it's a great way of also helping get our content out to more folks. We're also going to think about including links in our emails and on our website. This includes in your staff emails. So every email we send in our email footer is an opportunity to remind folks of the places they can connect with us across social channels, your website, subscribing to an email list. It's also going to be in your mass emails that your organization is sending out and on your website. We want to make sure our websites and our mass emails always have an opportunity for folks to find us on the social channels of their choice. Just a quick side fact, stat, is that most users in the world, especially even in the US, are only on 2 social networks. It's Facebook and one other social network. So most users are not on every social network. And because of that, most users are not going to follow you on every social network. But by being on the different social networks and the channels and promoting them via our other communications gives people the opportunity to connect with us in a way that they want. And that's ultimately what we're trying to do, is we're trying to allow the folks, our constituents, to connect with our organization in the way that they most want. I would actually include that, in that point, the link on the website is one that I find it's very effective, surprisingly actually, is on your email unsubscribe page. So we all have probably email lists that we're using to update our constituents or our donors about our work. And of course, we all have, some percentage, hopefully less than 1% of our subscribers that are unsubscribing each time we send an email. Well, that unsubscribe goes to a page, and that page often says, thank you, or you're unsubscribed, or we're sorry to see you go. But I would love to encourage you to think of that also as another opportunity to allow the user to engage with you on a different channel. Often when folks are unsubscribing, especially nowadays when we're all bombarded on a daily basis, I think, via email and being added to lists left and right, a lot of us want to unsubscribe from emails in order to clean up our inbox and maybe make our email a little bit lighter and easier. That doesn't necessarily mean that the constituent is trying to cut off all contact with you as an organization. So think about maybe providing an opportunity on those unsubscribe acknowledgement pages for people to connect with you across Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, whatever social channels you're on. I've actually seen it work fairly well. On your business cards, again, email signature we talked about, possibly thinking about doing a campaign with an incentive. And so remember, we're trying to get folks in the door here. This is getting folks to like our pages. So what type of incentives might we be able to use that could encourage an increase in followers? Christine, I'm not sure, or David, have either of y'all done either of those?
Sorry,
Brian,
we tried a really limited experiment with incentives. And I mean, the only incentive was basically to get more people in the door at a donor event. And essentially it was just amongst most of our staff and our volunteers, but basically was to say, hey, if you get this person in, we'll, post your name and post their name. And it was basically looking for business people and business money. And so it was basically encouraging them to reach out to get both the presence of folks and their money, and saying, we will honor that. We will honor both of you in a blog post. And that actually, I think, worked a little bit, not hugely, but it did give something, it gave a goal that people could work towards, and it gave them, and I said maybe 3 to 5 people, and I think it really gave them just a concrete, goal to work at. So that was helpful.
I think that's a great example.
Yeah, I came from tech before going into law, and almost nobody used business cards there. But everybody in law uses business cards. It is worth putting those things even prominently on the back in large print, especially in law.
Yeah.
And we're finding that our signature, we basically made our staff put our icons, our social media icons in their signature lines, and we provided them with a template and provided them with support to do that. And that has been very effective because while some of us may only really talk to community partners rather than clients or other folks, you will see those names appear in our social media channels. So that's really effective.
That's great to hear. And to the incentive point, another one that I've done with a few orgs now and has worked fairly well is we all probably have donors, major donors, and we maybe have a donor who gives $1,000 a year in June or something, and we kind of know it's coming or we expect it coming. Is to think about communicating with that donor first and foremost, because of course we want to get their permission, and asking, hey, you've given us this donation the last couple of years. We are extremely thankful. We're trying to increase our Facebook following. If you're planning on giving this donation again this year, would you mind if could we use that as an incentive to get new followers? In other words, could we promote that we have a major donor willing to donate $1 for every new follower we get in the next 5 days, up to $1,000. And it's a great way of actually using existing donors who are already planning on giving anyway. We don't have to tell our social media followers that. And using that as an incentive to gain new followers. And so then when we promote on social media that to our existing fans and followers, we are asking them to share it with their networks, their friends and family, and their social networks to help us increase the number of followers. Finally, another opportunity is possibly doing a photo contest. I'm not exactly sure if photo contests would work in the same way for legal organizations as I've seen them work in others. It's one thing, especially for a animal rights organization or a animal care organization, to have a photo contest where people post pictures of their animals. It might be a little bit harder to get folks seeking legal services to promote or share photos as part of a photo contest. But there are ways, whether it's around specific events like a holiday or even Mother's Day or Father's Day. It could be asking folks, what does something mean to them, to share a photo of something that represents love for Valentine's Day. Obviously, the more connected you can make it to your brand and your mission and your work, the better. So you'll want to think very clearly about your programs and what you're offering and how you might be able to connect such incentives and contests directly to your work. And then last but not least is, of course, is telling people. It's reminding folks constantly. You can find me on Twitter at Chris Tuttle. You can find me on Facebook as Tuttle Communications. You can find Idealware as Idealware on both Facebook and Twitter and probably every other social network. So we're all there, but we have to tell people how to find us. So a couple comments here. Dee says, what is the best signature that won't bounce email? So you've had issues showing up on spam or spam filters or virus filters because you were using Outlook signatures. Images as attachments because they don't look right. Yes, that's definitely an issue. It's really hard to say. There's no one complete solution that works for everybody. I do use images in my email, but I use them in a way that they're downloaded from a web page, so they're not attached as attachments. I use a program called WiseStamp, which is a way that you can integrate email signatures into Google Apps or Gmail. Outlook signatures actually typically usually work really well, especially if you don't use images on them. Outlook signatures, in order to use images, you need to make sure that your IT department has set them up so that the images are not going through with the email's attachments, but instead being downloaded from a web server. And then finally, if that's still an issue or still of concern, the last way is just to actually have text links and avoiding the images altogether. I would also add to this whole idea of attracting folks and letting folks know where we are is to remember to also use our offline channels to remind people that we are on social channels. And sometimes that could be a sign or signage that we have at a conference or an event. It could be written into a program. It might be the actual URL or a name on a specific channel, like Twitter or Facebook. Or it can sometimes just be by including those social media logos in the bottom of a brochure under our contact information. So we have a brochure, we have our address, our name, address, and phone number and website at the back. And maybe underneath that, just including the Facebook, Twitter logos, which visually reminds folks that they can find us on social media. So some screenshot examples of attracting followers, that basis. We have UCP here who started a board on Pinterest, and they're promoting this via Facebook. So they started a Pinterest board for folks with disabilities and their families, and they're asking folks to share resources about what kind of resources should we have on our Pinterest board. Well, it's great because it's an engaging question of actually asking folks, what should we share? But what they're also doing is they're using one social network to promote another social network, which is also great. We have examples over on the right-hand side. Top, we have Stomp. And you can see that this is actually a very common one, especially for younger organizations that are just getting started on social, is saying, here's where we are. We have 839 followers. Can you help us get to 1,000? Can you share our organization with others? And often just asking people on social media to do things is sometimes the easiest way of getting them to do things. We have another example from Harvard that actually provides a link through to a extension undergrad program that they're asking folks to engage with and check out there. So they had a couple of different links that they were sharing. And then the final one, the Asian Americans Advancing Justice, AAJC, has a Twitter campaign in which they're actually combining tweets with this offline event. In this case, it was a reception that they were doing that evening. And they're actually using their hashtag to encourage folks to follow the event on Twitter, which is a great, great example of how we're combining and mashing the worlds of offline and online together. So even if you can't attend this event, you can still follow along to what's happening by following us and the hashtag on Twitter. And that's where hashtags actually come in handy for, especially on Twitter if you're active there. Some other examples of attracting followers are going to be on our website, and this is by just providing links often. So this could be in our sidebar, follow New York Public Library on these social channels, Maryland Legal Aid asking for folks to get social with us, Chesapeake Bay follow us, reminding folks. Also across the top, California State Association of Counties, they provided it in their header. Where you provide this is going to be up to you, but all of these are the most common examples of how folks are sharing via websites, and it's how users expect to be able to find our social channels. And I do myself. If I'm looking at an organization, I do expect to be able to go to their website, and either in the header, sidebar, or footer, I expect to be able to see their social channels and connect with them on the channel that I want. So any other ideas out there, either shared via chat or you can unmute your phone, any other ideas of other things we could do to attract folks? You can just use that chat box and share them, or unmute your phone with a *7.
Well, I think your comment that, using basically word of mouth can be just as effective is really good. We're continually doing outreach to clients, bases. We're continually training large groups of professional people, and just, including the information about our social media channels and ways to get a hold of us, along with, say, the presenter's name and position title, is very effective, I think.
Great.
I think the thing that has definitely worked best for me is cross-promotion. Find someone else who is doing something similar. Don't view them as competition. Bring them in to do a guest post, to share something with you so that they can leverage their network and you can leverage yours. That cross-pollination allows you to reach a much larger audience.
I think that is 100% correct. Completely agree with all of that. And then another example is also just asking folks. It's asking folks on social media, what do you like most and how can we build our following? What suggestions do your followers have on how you can achieve or attain new followers and a larger crowd? It's a great way of actually finding folks as well. One other one I do want to throw in there real quick, for if there's anybody on the phone who maybe is a more advanced Facebook user, we don't tend to put this in the presentation because it's a little bit more difficult to set up. But if you feel like you're already doing all of this and you're already a pro, then I would suggest looking into Facebook custom audiences. And Facebook custom audiences, if you have some tech skills, it's not too hard, but it is possible. You can actually you can upload your email list of your existing donors or your existing email subscribers, and you can find out which of them are not following you on Facebook. And you can even promote posts. It does cost a little bit of advertising money, but you can promote posts directly to them or promote ads directly to them. So you can try to find your email subscribers or your donors who aren't following you yet and get them to engage with you. So a little advanced tip there. The next one we're going to talk about is listening and responding. Listening and responding, of course, is the next natural part of our work here. We've gotten folks' attention. We want to make sure we're listening to them and actually responding to them, starting the communications. And so some examples from Amy up in the left-hand corner, actually replying to somebody, Norman, who would actually, I just happen to know who they are, so I know Nonprofit Bridge is Norman, and actually Norman had sent something out. So Amy actually used this old-style retweet to allow the original tweet to be shown, and Amy could respond and give a comment. Tweets, if you're using Twitter, also are threaded. So if you use the reply button on a tweet, the conversation will stay together. Those tweets will stay together. And the reply button is that first one if you're newer to that. We have another example down below where we see some conversation going on. So somebody had actually asked, like a partner organization had actually asked about how do we tweet this information out? Is there a direct link? And it's just responding and letting folks know that, yes, there is. You can do it here. Here's how. It can be a great way, like we've talked about a few times, of communicating with our partners. Asking for feedback is such a great way of getting folks to engage with you. Everybody has an opinion, and most people love to share their opinions, and it is one of the ways that a lot of us use social networks. So we can tap into that by actually asking our constituents for their opinions. And another example with Morgan, said something the world is going to listen, great photo, that actually just got folks to actually start talking. But we can see down here the more important part is that Special Needs Swim Lessons, the organization in this case, actually responded to folks who were sharing personal information. If you're on Facebook and you haven't done it yet, I would encourage you to look in your settings and turn on replies. So these screenshots here are actually a good example. We can see the like button under somebody's comment, but we can't see, there's no reply button. And now these are some older screenshots. So the reply functionality is new to Facebook as of about a year ago, and it defaults as being turned off. So a lot of us probably have it turned off still or didn't realize it was turned off. What replies allow you to do is, instead of having this email, these comments stacked on top of each other, is a reply allows you to very easily, as your page, reply to one person's comment, and it actually creates threaded conversations. So it makes it much easier for folks to follow, especially as you're increasing your engagement in conversations. So for time's sake, I'm actually going to move us along here to talking about interaction, and how do we encourage interaction, and how do we get folks to engage with us. And as I said in the very beginning of the session, it's often the way we talk about our communications, the way we structure our communications. If we are asking questions, if we're making statements, one, or asking questions that are yes and no answers, we're going to be limiting engagement just by the nature of the way we're communicating with folks. If we're asking open-ended questions, tell me your experience with, how do you feel about, what do you think of this? Open-ended questions often inspire more engagement and more cross-communication. And of course, there are ways we can do that while we're providing resources, sharing our events, highlighting people in our community, stories about our work, the impact we're making, making connections between folks, or even sharing volunteer or job opportunities. So some examples of those in action here is Grand River's Future Vision. We see an example here where it actually asks folks to share and send their photos of their experiences whitewater rafting, and also kayaking and canoeing and boating. But asking people to actually share their own photos is a great way if you're able to tap into that in a way that's relevant for your organization. Social is very visual, if we haven't seen that yet. Asking people to actually do something for us, or asking people, help spread the word about this. This is actually very, very true, and it's still true. We find that if you ask people to like something, if you ask people to share something, if you ask people to say something, that they're often more likely to like, share, or do whatever we're asking. Whereas if we just post the content as is, we might not get as many likes. Now, we don't want to do that every time, because every single post starting out with share this would become obnoxious and annoying. So we want to use it very strategically in what are we trying to share? What are the best content pieces we have each month or week that we want people to share, and using it on occasion. You can also use it with a non-direct ask. So I work with one organization, a foundation, that actually does not like to ask people to do things. It's just a personal thing about their messaging and their brand, that they find it to be a little bit odd asking people to share a resource. So we tested out some examples of asking people indirectly. And what I mean by that is we posted a really great video of some content we had, and we said, we think this video is incredibly share-worthy. And sure enough, that video got more shares than any other content we had shared in months. So we're still asking, or we're insinuating what they should do, but we're not being as direct about it. So we can be a little creative about that. Some more examples of encouraging interaction, excuse me, my voice today, is some pictures we have up and all the examples here, but each of them was actually asking folks to do something and encouraging them to do stuff. So in this example down below, we actually asked folks, how can jobs help people with criminal records out of prison? And so we asked people to actually join us for this live conversation and to learn more. And that's actually using that opportunity to do a live video or hangout to actually get people to engage with us in a different setting or a different medium. Over on the right-hand side, another example is actually sharing pictures of folks who are involved with us, in this case a staff person. But our staff, our board, our volunteers, people want to know people. We all have relationships with people, not with organizations or brands. So we want to make sure that we're showing the human side of our work. And that may be your staff, it may be your major donors who are willing to share their story or why they support your work. But think about how we can share information about the people who are involved with our work in a way that respects privacy and is respectful of the people we're sharing information about. But we do find that when we share personal information and personal pictures, that we will see more engagement and interaction. And one of my favorites is in the top left. I use this with every organization I work with, is the fill in the blank. Is asking people the easiest, simplest question that we can think of. That, of course, somehow relates to our work. This is Alex's Lemonade Stand Foundation, so they can actually ask the coolest place to have a lemonade stand would be. Often I will use with our foundations, I'll use a tie-in to what's called Follow Friday, which is very common on Twitter, but also is becoming more popular on other networks. And we'll say, it's Follow Friday. What nonprofits do you follow? What organizations do you follow on social media? And we're just asking people very basic, simple questions. The easier it is to answer and to engage, the more likely people are to do it. Another way is by using hashtags. This is more true on Twitter than it is Facebook, although Facebook has integrated hashtags now. They're still not searched in a public fashion the same way they are on Twitter. But on Twitter, hashtags can actually be searched. So we could ask people to send a tweet out and use a hashtag with their tweet. And that might be answering a question or being part of a conversation or sharing their feelings about something. We might even ask them to do that via our email list. So sending out an email saying, you know, we have this, we're doing a question on Twitter today. Tweet out your answer with the hashtag, whatever it is. And Humane Society's example of their Fun Friday question, how did your pet get his or her name? Obviously some good engagement. Again, it's a simple, easy way to encourage folks to communicate with you. The more that people are commenting on our posts, again, the more people are engaging with our content, the more likely we will be able to move them up the ladder to ultimately click the link and take action and become donors and do more. For time's sake, I'm going to move us right along to take action. If we have about, I think, 6 more minutes left, and I just want to just throw out there now, if there are questions you have about social media, especially around specific social networks that have not been answered yet, please feel free to go ahead and ask them in the chat room, and I'll make sure that we try to get to them at the very end of this, and that Christine and I can both answer any questions folks have. So taking action, again, is the hardest thing to get people to do. That's that ultimate goal. It's getting folks to actually get off the computer and attend our events, to register for something, to participate in a competition that actually requires them to create content, especially if we're trying to get folks to create videos or artwork. It can be very difficult. Asking people to meet new folks, to come attend a lunch or an office meeting. But we're asking people to take action offline often, or off the social network and take action on our website. And so there's a variety of ways that we're going to do that. Some examples we have here, something you are probably all doing yourselves, is sharing your programs and events, is letting people know the dates and times that things are going to be happening. So, Maryland Legal Aid here showing when their free clinic is going to be. We have a scavenger hunt for University College of Rumford, Mexico, asking folks to join in the scavenger hunt and take part, date, time, more information. Alex's Lemonade Stand, again, is actually asking people to show support. In this case, they were asking folks to change their profile photo. But that's a really hard thing to ask people to do, to change their profile photo to your photo. That's a big ask. But they're asking folks to take a stand and be part of Childhood Cancer Awareness Day. And Alliance for Water Efficiency is talking about the wonderful cat that does yoga. Support wise water use with insulated, never waste bottles. So just promoting this and asking folks to help out by actually tweeting a message. Some more action examples. Maryland Legal Aid again showing some photos from a convention project. This is actually, and this is a little bit two-way. This is actually a post action, and it's the follow-up of that action. So the action was folks coming to our event and we're following up by sharing that event on our sites. If you're not doing this yet, please definitely consider doing this. If you can, obviously, we want to think about all considerations of folks attending our events and photos. But event photos posted on social media can be a great way of getting people engaged and involved post-event. I did a study once with Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS, an organization in New York City, and we did a website study, and they do a lot of events. And we had volunteers and folks come in and give us feedback about our website. And throughout our survey, every single person said, when looking up events, every single person said, these pictures are great, where am I? They were looking for themselves in the pictures. I'll never forget it. There's especially this one particular volunteer that we had that was incredibly sweet, but he was really upset that his photo did not make it into our cut. People want to see themselves in our organizations and as part of our community, especially when they've taken time out of their day or money or resources to be part of our community. And so photos of events can be a great way of doing that. People can tag themselves, which then automatically shares that photo with all of their friends. And photos have the longest lifespan of anything we share on social media. So if you think about Twitter, for those who are on Twitter, when you look at somebody's new profile or somebody you're considering following, or when somebody follows you, maybe you should go check out their profile. Almost all of us tend to scroll down and look at their photos. When we connect with somebody on Facebook, whether it's an old high school or college friend or a colleague from work, what's the first thing we do? We tend to go look at their photos. And so photos have the longest lifespan. So by posting photos of folks at our events and encouraging folks to interact with them, to tag them, to view them and whatnot, will help get our message out further in the long run.
So two quick things on this. First, from an analytics perspective, on Twitter, Facebook, and on blogs, we've definitely seen anywhere from double to 10 times as many hits whenever there is an image or a photo related. The other thing, though, to definitely be aware of is the privacy concerns. Make sure that you get individuals' consent, especially if you're doing something around foreclosure or domestic violence or something like that, where it's potentially very sensitive. So I would add images. In some cases, definitely avoid any images of clients without their express consent. But even an image just related to the particular topic will help your reach dramatically.
I agree.
This is Christine. We actually have some really nice plain language photo releases that we have worked on in the past year, because in Montana, I mean, we're very paranoid anyway. So I mean, just in general. And so if anybody wants help with building a photo release that may actually make sense to whoever you're taking the photo of, you can contact me and we'll provide those to you.
If you're okay with it, I would be very willing to also post that on LSNTAP as a resource. That is definitely a common question that we get.
Oh, great. Yep, I'll connect with you, Brian. Thanks.
Great. I love that. Another thing that I've done at events is, especially where it's events where we probably have photographers and whatnot, like a gala or a fundraiser, is we'll often have little red stickers, little red dots, and ask, as people register and come in, is letting folks know that there are photographers in-house, that if they prefer that their photos are not used, that they just wear a red dot on their shoulder or their name tag. And it's a great way of letting our photographers know who not to take photos of. It also helps us post-event when we're going through photos, because if we spot a red dot, then we know we need to either edit them out or crop them out or not use the image. So what's next? What are you going to take back? What are you going to take away from this webinar as we wrap this up here? So just remembering that we want to develop our content based on the pyramid. We want to reach people at all levels. If we're constantly asking people to take actions and to do high-level engagement things, we're not reaching new followers, we're not listening to our constituents, and we're not necessarily encouraging interaction. So let's think about how we create content at each level of the pyramid. I'd strongly encourage that you devise a weekly plan for your content. Even if this is just a high-level overview plan, it may carry you on for months, for weeks, could be a specific campaign, but you may say, okay, Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays, we're going to check out, or Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, depending on your capabilities, we're going to check out questions and make sure we've answered everybody. On Tuesdays, we're going to ask a question. That's an engagement opportunity. On Fridays, we're going to share a resource. So just drafting this out, even at a high level, will help remind us of all the different communications we need to be sending and all the types of communications we need to be sending. And in fact, I used to keep something very similar to this above my desk when I managed full-time communications at a nonprofit. And it was incredibly helpful. I almost looked at it as a bingo check sheet, and I could check things off as I accomplished them throughout the week. Encourage you to collaborate to avoid duplication. If there are others that are already doing great things, there's no need to recreate it. If there's another legal organization that has a great resource on something, and you don't have the capabilities of creating your own resource, then let's share their resource. Let's pool our energy and collaborate more and partner more. And I promise you, it's incredibly helpful, not only in helping ease the work that you're doing, but it also, when you promote other partner organizations' resources, especially if you tag them and or notify them, it also encourages them to share your resources. So it can be a really great way of collaborating and cross-promoting one another. I know we're at time, but there's a few questions that have come in. I want to see what we can answer. So let's go through here. So I see Brian actually has posted just that there's a survey. Oh, that actually may be the question, which is great. That there's a survey for SurveyMonkey that we do encourage you to take. It's in the chat room. Brian, will you be emailing that out or anything else that we need to share with folks?
All of the slides are posted to our SlideShare account, so they're available there. And as mentioned earlier, the video for this will be up on our YouTube channel.
Terrific. Well, if there are any final questions, please feel free to ask them now via audio or in the chat box. We're happy to answer. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us today and for being part of this. I do see some posts. I love that. Somebody posted, follow us on Twitter. Yes.
So thank you so much for speaking today. I greatly appreciate it. Very good talk.
Terrific. Christine, thank you so much also for adding your commentary, and I hope everyone has a great day.